That's it.
Okay.
All right, you ready to roll?
Sure,
let's do it. Well, I'm sitting here, another episode of the podcast. Got a new guest in front of me, Ron Hughes, the executive director of the Florida Surf Museum. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks. Pleased to be here.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I met you down at the museum. Man, that was probably, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, something like that
I think
now?
it was earlier this year.
This year, yeah, we connected, took a tour around there. You showed me your infamous magazine collection, which was pretty cool to see. So I thought we'd get you on the mic and have some conversation about Florida surfing. So again, thanks for coming in.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, what is the Florida Surf Museum? What's the goal of it? Like, let's start right there.
Well, the Florida Surf Museum is, basically just what it sounds like. It's a surf museum. It's dedicated to preserving and sharing the surfing history of Florida surfers and the community and all. We have our museum, the physical museum, which is at Ron Jons Surf Shop. It's in the smaller building to the north of the main building where the beach rental is at, and we have our physical museum there. But we also have a pretty extensive website, and we have a YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram. So we're all over social media and the website. What we can't pack into the museum itself, we kind of make up for with the website with more articles and history and photo galleries and things like that.
Checking all the boxes of today's new age. You got physical location, digital location, social media. That's awesome. How did you get involved? I don't remember asking you that when I met you down there, but how did you get involved in it?
Well, the museum originally began basically as a bunch of us at 13th Street and getting together, and Sean O'Hare and his dad Pat lived right nearby there.
Okay.
And so, over a course of time, the topic came up that we should have some kind of a museum of sorts, and Sean especially wanted to have a museum that he'd be able to recognize his dad Pat, who is just a legend in Florida. So it just basically went from talking about it to doing it on Sean's part. He opened up a small museum in downtown Cocoa Beach, and that wasn't able to sustain itself because of rent, so he moved into natural art. Pete and Deb gave him a corner of the surf shop, which was really cool.
Nice.
And once we got to that point and realized that we need to really look towards a bigger museum, we were able to get in Ron Jons and open, and we've been there since 2003.
What a really good place for it. I was talking to a few people recently, and Ron Jons has come up as one of the largest employers in the area in Cocoa Beach. Been here obviously a really long time. What almost a fitting spot for it. Natural art would have been cool to see it in there though, but got more square footage there in Ron Jons, and that's pretty sweet. And then I've seen a few boards in there. Like what are the boards that are in there? I'm sure they have some significance, but what are those boards that are hanging up all through there?
Well, it's kind of hard to zero in on
which one. Yeah. How about some of your favorite ones? You got favorite ones in there?
Yeah, a few. My very favorite one is one that we got not too long ago, and it's a wooden surfboard made out of cypress that was built by a family in Vero Beach, and the family's held on to it all this time, and it was donated to us just this last year. And so it was built, I'm saying the 1920s, but I think it's even earlier than that.
Dang.
It could be as early as 1915. So it's solid cypress, and it's in really good shape. Wow. They kept really good care of it. It's old growth cypress. It's just amazing looking.
How long is it?
It's about 6 feet long.
Okay. What from the early 1900s is still around today, other than probably things in wood like that, I would imagine? Probably not much.
I think just that surfboard.
Just that surfboard? That's the only thing? Nice. And how did you get involved in surfing just in general? Did you grow up in the Cocoa Beach or Central Florida area? I'm not familiar with where you grew up.
I grew up in Cocoa Beach.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
my dad moved our family here in 1954 to work at the Space Center. He worked for Pan Am, and they opened up the first contract there.
Oh, wow.
And so we were here in 54, and then once more housing became available over in Cocoa Beach, we moved there in 1962, so that's where I grew up.
Oh, nice. Okay, so that obviously explains the connection to surfing. Did you start surfing at a young age, or?
Oh, yeah. I was, 9 years old when we moved there, and almost immediately we were down at the beach because the beach is so accessible here, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were doing that immediately, and then I got my first surfboard when I was 12, and it was all over after that.
All over after that. Did you travel around much and surf, or just stay in Cocoa Beach, or kind of, is that my phone or your phone ringing there?
Yeah, mine's on
pause.
Do not disturb. So.
Sorry about that. That's a rookie mistake there, not shutting the phone off. So take two here. No, I don't cut or edit or anything. That's just going to have to roll in there. So you got your first surfboard, but were there any other spots you used to go to regularly when you were growing up, or what were some of your favorite spots surfing?
Well, when you're at grade school and high school age, can't afford to go anywhere.
True.
Not like today where the kids get sponsored trips all over the world. And we didn't have any reason to. The surf was fun right in front of our house. You could, walk or ride your bike there in less than 5 minutes.
Nice.
And so, every end street in Cocoa Beach had its own kind of neighborhood gang that surfed there because it was whichever street was closest to their house, that's where you surfed.
Right.
And, after, I turned 16, I didn't own a car. Very few people owned cars then in high school, but I was able to borrow my dad's car every now and then and go surf places like Patrick Air Force Base, and Sebastian and Shark Pit and all those places.
Nice. Did you
That,
get into First Peak at all? Did they let you slide into there? Because always the legend of First Peak in the inlet was they didn't let very many people get in there on First Peak. Was that sort of your experience down there? Did you surf at the inlet much?
I didn't surf the inlet much. You know, it was that much farther a drive from Shark Pit.
Sure.
And I surfed there, pretty regularly when I was, when I had transportation, like when I got older.
Right.
So, I did surf there from time to time over the years, but I didn't go there regularly.
So you were here for the whole space race. I mean, like that's the actual space race time, right? Around the 50s when we're trying to be the first ones to get to the moon. I'm sure Cocoa Beach and your father worked there out there at the Space Center. Do you, and this is a random conspiracy question since you brought up, not I'm bringing it up. What do you think of all this talk of if we did or did not go to the moon? Do you pay attention to this at all?
That's bullshit.
Bullshit? We went 100%?
Yeah, it's hard to listen to that one when I grew up here watching the rockets take off from the Space Center.
Yeah.
And, my dad worked on all the manned space programs. And, to say to somebody like myself that you don't think is real is insulting.
Insulting, yeah, I get that. I think that's the problem with the internet these days in general is you can kind of get people to, if you are so minded for this, get you to sort of see things on both sides, and it's hard to know what's true or not true. But I figured you would think that was bullshit, and I tend to lean that way too. But I don't know. You were there. I wasn't there. I'm going to lean into what you're saying. Nice. What's the main thing for the museum? I mean, you got a few things going on. I know Surfing Santa's coming up. You guys are kind of involved in that. And then there's what's the event this weekend? The Kidney Foundation one. Are you guys involved in that at all, or? No,
they run their that's NKF's event.
NKF.
They do that to raise money for NKF. So
nice.
We don't do that with them because that's their event. But we have Surfing Santa's coming up, which is a very big deal, and that's coming up real soon.
Nice.
And so that is an event that George Trotsett started, back about 15 years ago, and then as it got more involved and requiring more planning and organization, he offered it to the museum as a fundraiser. So that's what we do now.
Nice. And how many people go to that? Because everyone seems to talk about it around the community, and I saw some footage of it from last year. I've actually never been to the event. As much as I've been over here surfing, I've never been around that time, but it seems like it's a huge event every year now. It's got to be growing each time. Oh, yeah.
It's always been a big event. It's a lot of fun. It's just crazy good fun. It's, just everybody goes out and, when it first started, people came to the event and enjoyed it. But as it evolved over the next couple of years, people started dressing up in Santa outfits and Christmas outfits and elves and such.
Nice.
And then it became to the point where, the audience was as much of the event, the spectators as much of the event as the actual event itself. So we started a costume contest because of that.
Nice.
And so, but we have the costume contest. There's music. We have a band, and we have the big event where all the surfers run out to the beach and surf out in front of the coconuts there.
Oh, cool.
And it's just good fun. And you can take your family there, and you can let your kids run amok. You don't have to worry about them. They're going to be safe.
Yeah.
And it's just you should go to it at least once in your life.
This will be the year, because I've been talking about it, and obviously meeting you and trying to stay in tune to the surfing community the more I've spent over here in Cocoa Beach, not just coming over, surfing and getting out, spending a lot more time over here. I got to get out there this year. My kids would love it, because my son's 12 now, my daughter's 9. They both been surfing since they were 4, swimming by 2, surfing by 4. So they'd love to even just come and hang out and see the spectacle.
Yeah, it's perfect for the kids. They can dress up and go out surfing,
nice.
with all the other Santas and
nice.
just run around and have a good time.
Nice. Yeah, I met Mayor Keith Capizzi the other day. He came to an event we were doing downstairs, and then he came up here, and he told me he has Kelly Slater's first natural art surfboard. Have you heard this? That he's got one of his original boards?
It's a quiet flight, but
it's a quiet flight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I had talked to him about that, and he sent me a picture of it. And it's hard to say which one is the first one. It's not
true.
Technically, it's not really the first one. It may have been his first quiet flight board.
Okay. Yeah.
But his first board was actually a board that the Salix made for him back when he was like 9, and it's.
Under what name was that? The
Salix Surf Shop. That was before your time.
Okay. The local shop? Or?
Yeah. Well, you know where the statue is, the Kelly Slater statue?
Sure.
Right across the street from there was their shop. They're right next to what used to be Almost Pizza's, now Slow and Low.
Okay.
But they made him a surfboard, and it was like one of the little square-tailed twin fins from the early 70s. Well, it was later, it was the 80s, but it has a big spray graphic of a shark, coming up like the Jaws movie.
Oh, nice.
So, and that board has disappeared. Nobody's ever found it. So, if you see it, grab it.
Grab it, get a hold of it. Nice. Yeah, he's obviously the legend from around here that everybody knows. Arguably the greatest athlete of all time, looking at across it from a sports standpoint, the youngest and the oldest champion. Who are some other legends? I mean, obviously Caroline Marks winning the gold medal is huge for coming out of this area, but who's some other legends that we should know about in the surf community around here?
Well, that's the thing about this area, not just Cocoa Beach. I like to say Cocoa Beach is a name that people recognize, but it's really Brevard County. The whole county has just been a hotbed for surfing from the early 60s. Yeah. And it really all started when Dick Cattry and Murph the Surf came up here in 1959, surfed Sebastian Inlet for the first time, and not too long after that, in either 60 or 61, Murph opened the first standalone surf shop in Florida, and I think it may be the first one on the East Coast.
Really?
But in any case, those two were the earliest ones to get involved. I'm not going to get deep in the weeds. They weren't the only ones. But
okay, some controversy there, but no.
Well, there's just more people that you don't know about until you start digging around. But in any case, he came back from Hawaii after being there for 3 years and formed the Surfboards Hawaii team, and that was really the start when surfing just really exploded here, because Dick was a visionary. And he was an organizer and a go-getter, and he put together these kids that, just went out surfing on the beach for no reason particular and turned them into the most competitive surf team in the East Coast in the early 60s. They had Gary Proper, Mike Tabling, Fletcher Sharp, Mimi Monroe, Sam Gornto, and all these other people who became really famous. Claude Koch is another. And they went up and down the East Coast in the mid-'60s, entering contests, and won pretty much every trophy you could take home. They took them home, and because of that, they inspired surfing all up and down the East Coast, and kind of gave the East Coast a kind of an ego boost that they didn't have before, because they were always kind of considered second-rate compared to the West Coast.
Yeah, I get into that conversation with people regularly. There's no waves here. There's never any good waves. Sometimes I take offense to that, especially when people don't surf regularly or somewhat know even what they're talking about. But why do you think that is? That obviously California is known for more consistent surf, I would say. But I think the general consensus with a lot of people that are somewhat uneducated in it think that the waves are never any good over here. I mean, would you disagree, or would you agree with that from a wave standpoint?
Yeah. Well, there's no dancing around it. The waves aren't as good here as they are in other parts of the world. But, having said that, it when it gets good, it can get really good here. Yeah. It only happens a certain number of days out of the year, but because of that, and because the waves are not, as perfect and have the power and speed of other places, Florida surfers learn how to surf junk.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you can surf junk, then you can go any place in the world, and once you get adapted to the speed and the power, you can do really well.
Yeah.
And plus, the thing is, the surfing is really accessible here. You've got 70 miles of beach access that you can go surf anytime you want. You can surf almost year round without a wetsuit.
Yeah.
And the waves are generally, most days, small enough that most anybody can get out there and learn how to surf without killing themselves.
Yeah. I went out to California for the first time in January. I might have told you that last time I saw you, and I did the usual. Went to Trestles, checked out went to Blacks, went to Oceanside Pier, and the thing I thought was just how crowded it was, because even at like lowers, I mean, you can kind of separate a little bit, but it just seemed to be so many people in one specific area. And that's what I really like about Florida sandbars. To your point, you could really drive up the beach and find somewhere where you're not in a big crowd, unless you want to be obviously in a big crowd. But, I've always took a little exception to that, because there are good days that come, and then hurricane season is always sometimes where you get a little bit larger, because people think we don't get big waves here. And I'm like, I've been out there a few times, and there's all these legends of Big Wednesday and some of these huge days that have come through over the last few decades that I think if anybody says it doesn't get big here, I beg to differ. From the right time, the right place, to your point, maybe not as consistent, and there is something to, Florida surfers being able to surf in anything. I tell people all the time, I can find a section even if it's blowing the wrong way. I don't need to be have the wind blowing the perfect way just to get me to go out there, but I just like to be out there. Yeah, they you can go to our Facebook page and see all kinds of video of all kinds of big waves and all that. The whole argument about big waves is kind of a macho thing that doesn't it's not really relevant. Most surfers are perfectly happy surfing head high or less. And if they want to find bigger waves, they're easy to find. I would agree. That's an interesting way to put it, more of an ego or a macho statement about big waves. But I kind of don't really like too much overhead anymore. I mean, I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm getting older myself here too. I like the little bit easier, a little bit more cruising, a little less duck diving, and certain things. But I've been down to Costa Rica a couple times, obviously out to California. I was going to Puerto Rico about once or twice a year, which I love surfing down there. And then, I'd love to get back out to California. Been up to Hatteras a few times, which is a fun place to surf. But I don't know, I'm just sold on the East Coast. I'm not going anywhere. I love it over here.
Yeah, it's there's always something to surf.
Yeah.
Well, except for the last few weeks. But
well, right now, I think the west coast of Florida is breaking a little bit. I'm checking on some cams over there. I might have saw a picture on your guys' Facebook page of some decent swell over there. You ever get over there to the Gulf and surf any?
I've never surfed the Gulf.
Yeah, me neither. It's something I would like to do. It's kind of a timing thing, trying to figure out the right time to get over there. But now with cams, I was talking to this guy downstairs earlier. He was like, how do you know when waves are coming? I'm like, there's apps for everything now, right? It used to be, even when I was growing up, you would either hope there'd be some swell or think what you're getting yourself into. My uncles would always help like that, but now the apps help, and sort of the forecasting's getting pretty good and pretty consistent. But I don't know, I think some people, it has to be fair to good before they're even out there. But I don't know, I found good luck in poor conditions all the time. Just get out there and have some fun.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about cams, is that people look at the cams so much now, and they won't go out unless it looks good on the cam.
Yeah.
And you can go on the days when just go to the beach, and you don't know until you get to the beach and look.
Yeah.
And you can get on to the beach when it looks terrible on all the cams, and go out and find some really good waves and surf them all by yourself.
Yeah, that's the dream right there. I mean, I like crowds a little bit. I think that's a little maybe competitive nature that's fun to get out there and mix it up with some people, and it's fun too. But I think you told me you're over on paddleboards now. Are you still paddleboarding some, or?
I do. I've gravitated to stand up.
Stand up, yeah,
which I like a lot.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy. He said he knew you. I forget his name. That's terrible. SoBe Surf Shop, I think he runs.
Oh, yeah, Gerard.
Yeah, you know Gerard? Yeah, he was telling me some crazy stuff about long distance paddles on those things, just some speed records and things that he was doing. So I've never gone down that road, but it looks fun. But it looks hard to whip that huge board around in some cases. But he seems like an interesting guy too. From some things he's done in that shop seems cool as well. But I pretty much switched over to solely twin fins. I got one 7.0 mid-length I'm riding up there, but I kind of got off the thrusters a long time ago. I think all of us sort of wanted to surf like Kelly, which is not that simple, So once I realized that, that's not going to be me, I just switched to twin fins and just get out there and cruise and kind of glide and have fun. But those have been a nice addition to my life over the last probably 10, 12 years now, just solely riding twin fins.
Yeah, I've always liked twin fins. I've never been a thruster fan.
Yeah. Was there something about it that you didn't like, or just?
I've ridden everything: single, twins, quads, thrusters, and such. But I in the early '80s, I bought a used Catri twin that George Robinson shaped that I just loved, and I surfed it till it just basically fell apart. And then I went to thrusters, and I surfed them. And they surfed great, and I enjoyed them a lot. But there's always something about it that bugged me, but I never could really put my finger on it. Yeah. And then after a while, I realized what it was is that two-stage bottom turn just really bugged me. We have to drop in, make a turn, then you shift to your inside fin, it takes off a second time, and I hated that, interruption in the turn.
Versus a twin fin, there's no interruption because you don't have that one drag in there. I see what you're saying. It's been a long time since I've even been on anything other than, a twin fin. But, interesting. Yeah. I don't know. There's so much nuance to surfing and people have all kinds of ideas about it, but I don't know. I just think it's more about, for me anyways, it's more about having fun. And I like things where my cell phones aren't around. Also being out there, and this is sort of the only thing that you think about. Did I read something about you that I wanted to ask you? You were in the Navy, right?
Yes.
And then some kind of diver, right?
Yeah, I was in the Navy for 6 years. I was a salvage diver.
Salvage diver. What is a salvage diver? I wasn't familiar with that term when I heard that.
Basically, a salvage diver is an underwater mechanic.
Okay.
My time in the Navy, I mostly worked in harbor maintenance operations where you had to work on ships that are in port, and so that's you're doing repairs, you're doing inspections, you're setting up the things you need to allow people to work on the inside of the ship. You're doing search and rescue and all these sort of things, and it's just basically underwater maintenance.
Nice. And how long did you do that for?
I was in the Navy for 6 years.
Oh, okay. Were you stationed around Florida, or did you get out and about some?
No, I was stationed in Hawaii.
In Hawaii? Oh, dang. Did you get some surfing in while you're out there, too?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
There's a thing in the military. They say, when you first get out of your schools, like your A school, your training, they say you put in for where you want to be stationed, and they always say, whatever you put in there, you're not going to get. But I put in for Y anyhow, and I got it.
And you got it. Wow. So that's not the normal. You just got lucky, huh? Jeez.
Yeah, and being a diver, I was on a destroyer repair ship, and the ship was a World War II, and then it never left the harbor. So I was in Hawaii the entire time, and I could go surf, pretty much every day.
Dang, rough gig, huh?
Yeah, it was paid for.
Nice. Something else I wanted to ask you. So I was looking at something you guys had up. It might have been like a 1930s, like Daytona Beach surf contest photo where everybody's standing with these huge surfboards. How did people haul those things around? Because they had to have been heavy. I mean, was it a two-person job to move some of those things around, or even what vehicles were they strapping them on roofs to back in like the 30s? I was wondering.
It's not like people think when they see that. The very earliest surfboards that they rode back in the 1920s and all were solid wood, and they were heavy. But in early 1930, this fellow Tom Blake, who's one of the biggest legends aside from Duke Kahanamoku in surfing history, he came up with a plan to make a hollow surfboard out of plywood. It was built with plywood and ribs, just like an airplane wing, basically.
Okay.
And so they were about 13 feet long, but they generally weighed 50 pounds or less. So, kind of heavy, but not so much that an average person in good shape couldn't pick it up and haul it down to the water.
Got it, because they're hollow. That makes sense. I mean, if they were solid wood, that would make them quite significantly heavier.
Yeah, then they get 75, 80 pounds or more.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned Duke. I think you were telling me that there's a lot of people attribute him to, bringing surfing over here, but weren't you telling me that there was some surfing that was going on the East Coast before even he came over from Hawaii?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, the history evolves like history is any other topic you think of once, you find out something you think is true, and then it turns out that that's not really accurate, and there's more research to do. At any rate, the Duke Kahanamoku was one of the most famous surfers in surfing history, and the pioneer of the sport, and he deserves the title. But he first came to the East Coast in 1912 to give a surfing demonstration in New Jersey. So everybody kind of thinks that's when surfing first started on the East Coast and the West Coast. But it's actually started even earlier, back in the early 1900s. There's a fellow named Alexander Hume Ford who was out of an aristocratic family in South Carolina, and he had gone to Hawaii back in the late 1800s, like 1899, and saw surfing and fell in love with it. And then he started to promote it. And so he was kind of the earliest ambassador. He's the one that actually met Duke and promoted Duke as being the star of surfing, like the first Kelly Slater, so to speak. So he was promoting it much earlier than that. And in 1909, he wrote an article for Collier's Weekly, which was kind of like the Life magazine of the day, about Hawaiian surfing. And had a couple pictures of it, and then that was printed on the mainland, and that's what started everything on the mainland. All of a sudden, people were, getting into the whole surfing thing. In fact, the earliest mention of surfing in Florida is from a little paragraph in the Daytona Beach Gazette, printed in 1909, about a fellow that got all excited about surfing and built himself a surfboard, and he got excited about it because he read this article by Alexander Hume Ford in the Collier's Weekly. So it was like the first endless summer moment, so to speak.
Wow. From 1909 in Daytona Beach. Dang. So surfing's been well established in the East Coast of Florida for much longer than probably I would not thought it would be that from 1909. I was thinking maybe 30s. I've seen some of those photos at 30s. That's crazy that it's been around that long. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think I don't know. I get it though, and I think it's having a nice rise. I think the Olympics help with that. What do you think about the whole wave pool? Should the Olympics be in a wave pool? Should it be in the ocean? What's your take on that? My son and I were just having this debate.
I don't care.
Yeah.
It's all surfing.
Right.
I don't have an issue with competitive surfing or soul surfing, or I don't see an issue with people surfing bodyboards or surf mats like I do, or stand-ups or short boards or long boards. It's all surfing. And everybody gravitates towards what they enjoy the most. And I think that's fine.
I like that approach, not just to surfing but to life in general. Gravitate to what you like. But my brother has a muscular disorder, so he couldn't actually surf, but he rode those sit down boards, right? But I do remember people always used to try to give you crap about that's not surfing, or boogie boarding's not surfing. But I like that mentality. If you're out there and you're enjoying the ocean, that's kind of really what it's all about. To each their own. I think the wave pool technology is pretty cool, and I heard that there may be a wave pool coming to Lori Wilson. Have you heard this?
The whole wave pool thing is kind of amusing to me, because I've been following it, and then every couple of years somebody announces a wave pool is opening up in Florida, and then nothing ever happens. So I'll believe it when
you see it.
When the water's filled up to the pool and I see waves rolling, then I'll believe it's going to happen.
Nice. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I'm kind of like you. I follow the technology. There's one that Aki did out in Australia that looks pretty cool. It's this giant, I don't know if you've seen it, almost looks like a huge plunger that drops down.
Plunger, yeah.
Exactly, like a toilet plunger, but it looks really cool, and it breaks so many different waves, different things up from the ground that they've done. But Kelly's looks intense, the first one they put out there in California. And then the other one that looks really cool is the one in Waco. You know, but I think
the Wave Garden technology.
The Wave Garden one, yeah. I think it's changed a lot of the, you know, the professional game, the aerial game. You see them doing a lot more, almost sometimes like skateboard tricks on those things, which is pretty cool to see. But I like it all. Like I'm not the purist in that mind, but I do like, I think, watching them battle the ocean too. If I'm watching competitive surfing, I like seeing them maybe get caught by a set, you know, having to paddle some. I know they get picked up by skis, but I do like, I guess that's probably the purest view, but I do like seeing them battle the ocean a little bit, because to me that's part of the fun.
Yeah, I mean, for a non-surfer, the wave pools in a competitive sense are more understandable.
Yeah.
You know, and a non-surfer trying to understand how a competitive surfing contest works, they're just clueless.
Fair.
Because it's, you know, it basically doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And it's controllable, right? It's the same wave each time, the set scoring system, and that makes it a little bit more consistent, but I think they're both cool. Yeah, my 12-year-old was like, I think it should be in the ocean. I was trying to get him to elaborate on his point on that a little bit. I think he might have heard it somewhere. That was sort of my end argument with him. But
well, it's like the Olympics. You know, you have, you know, downhill skiing, but it's on a groomed slope that's been made specifically for that purpose.
True.
Or bobsledding, or, you know, any of these other things, and the wave pool is no different. You know, it's set up for a specific purpose, which is to give a consistent wave so they can get a consistent score.
Yeah, and visually it looks the same, you know, just other than a different person on there and what they're capable of doing. Did you ever make it into the one over there at Disney, the Typhoon Lagoon one?
I've been there once.
Yeah, what'd you think?
You know, it's kind of a wonky wave, you know, as far as waves go. But I went there with some friends, and I took my board, and, you know, this is as I was getting older. I wasn't quick enough to get up on that thing on my little board, and I was kind of not having so much fun. But I had actually brought my surf mat with me, and I took that out there, and when I got on that, it was just an absolute hoot.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think one thing I enjoy about surfing is seeing, you know, sometimes I think about is as guys get older, as I'm getting older, like what can you keep doing, what can you keep enjoying? And it is cool to see guys, you know, still out there having fun in whatever way that looks like. But I've met a lot of guys that are, you know, 50s, 60s, you know, they're still able to get from their stomach to their feet, you know, very quickly. You know, I can't think of another sport or lifestyle choice that kind of promotes that as much as surfing does. That's kind of what keeps me interested in it, I think, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, your pop-up is the first thing to go.
Really? Yeah.
And it's just a matter of milliseconds in your timing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's kind of the fun for me to explore how to keep that from a longevity standpoint. I know everybody probably thinks that at some point, and I got some older friends that are like, it's going to go eventually. I'm like, maybe. But I think, you know, 50, 60 years old today is not the same as 50, 60 years old, you know, 30 years ago, from what we know, what we think we know about nutrition and obviously exercise and taking care of yourself. But I just like things that keep you moving and keep you outside.
Well, there's all kinds of different ways to surf. You don't have to, you know, stress over the fact that you might not be able to pop up on the board someday, because there's other ways to get out there, and that's really the main thing, is get out there and catch some waves.
Yeah, fair. Did you ever find yourself like training to be better at surfing when you were younger? Did you do anything specific to try to improve your surfing?
Well, everything I've ever done to stay in shape has been so I can surf.
Nice.
So but you know, you can train all you want, but eventually you're going to get older, and those skills are going to decline.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my focus has always been to just, you know, stave that off as much as I can.
Yes.
And you know, I've adapted. I rode short boards and went through that whole phase, and then after a while, I was kind of getting, frustrated with the fact that I couldn't get that drive that I wanted to get on a short board. So I started surfing long boards, which, you know, I enjoyed a lot.
Nice.
But, you know, now that's gotten to the point where my timing's off just enough that I can't really get up the way I want to. So rather than, you know, cry about it, I moved on to stand-up, which I found out I really like a lot.
Nice.
Because, you know, you can get on stand-up and instead of being stuck in the pack with everybody else, you can rove up and down the beach and pick off different peaks, and you have more mobility to kind of move up and down and look for surf. And so it's everything's got its pluses and minuses.
Sure. I'm always jealous of their visibility, being up that much higher, being able to see what's coming a little bit quicker. But I've never really been on them, only for fishing. I've only fished off of them like in the rivers and in lakes and stuff. But it's something that looks fun, and again, it's you can get out there and have fun on any type of board that you want. No one's judging you. But I do think there is some people that don't have that same mindset as you. But I appreciate that mindset of just finding a way to get out there to have fun. I think that's what it's all about. But I think as people get older, sometimes they stop doing things that they like, that have fun. Life gets in the way. Life is going to happen regardless. But part of this and everything I really do is to just sort of stay in that mentality of just trying to find ways to have fun.
And I don't worry about what other people think. I'm in it for myself. If I like surfing with my friends when I can, but I'm going to surf what I want, when I want, whether other people like it or not.
Nice.
Because I remember years reading Dick Cattry talking about surfing. He said one of the biggest regrets of his life was he quit surfing at 40. So
why?
Because he just was of that mindset that since he couldn't, which was common back 30, 40 years ago when he was surfing. He hit 40 and he wasn't surfing like he did when he was 20 and let it get to him. It's your ego messing with you.
Yeah. That's the one. I was just talking to a guy on here the other day that ego has gotten us a lot of places. I think in the history of humans, probably got us all technology and maybe even to America in general. But it can get in the way if you lean too much into it. Martial arts has taught me that a lot. Like a lot of people I've met through Muay Thai or through Jiu-Jitsu, you would think they would be these like ego-driven men, women, and not so much. Some of them, yes, but not so much. And I've always sort of related surfing more in that way to almost a type of martial art, a way to be in the elements, be by yourself, and just challenge yourself and, be selfish with it too, not care what people think. I like the way you think about things, John. I think I'm very similar in that way. I don't care too much what others think, but that does seem a problem with a lot of people. They care too much about what other people think about them.
Yeah, that's not uncommon.
Yeah, so. True. What's next for the museum? What are you guys working on over there? What are you excited about over there?
Well, we're still in our space there at Ron Jons, and we change the exhibit from time to time to kind of freshen it up.
Sure.
We a couple of years ago, we did a major renovation, which Ron Jon helped us pay for, and raise the ceilings, put in new lighting, and made it a much nicer space. But we're still kind of constrained by the space that we're in. So there's some other things that our museum in particular is kind of unique in that because it's in Ron Jons, we have a lot of people that come to the museum that are here on vacation or they're here on a cruise ship and they don't know anything about surfing, and they want to learn something about it. So it's important to me that when they come into the museum that I can give them kind of an overview of what our surfing is about here as much as possible within the space. So the exhibit we have is kind of partially set because it's got a timeline that kind of walks through the history as much as we can, and we change it around some, but because we will never, ever be able to put everything into that space, as far as the history goes. We have our website that they can go to.
Yeah. And so you got to be selective on what you use your square footage for. Yeah, that makes sense. What, something about, I wanted to ask you too, when I was a kid, there used to be still like professional contests. There was what was the one in Sebastian? There's a few professional contests. I think the Florida Pro is still a thing. Do they even have like professional contests in Florida anymore?
Oh yeah, that's very active. Yeah.
Oh man, maybe I'm just not. Yeah, I haven't seen any of them, but yeah.
Well, all the different contests go through a cycle. They'll run for a few years, and then it kind of interest moves somewhere else, and then somebody else takes over. Like right now we're partnered with Space Coast Board Riders, which is a organization, board riders club, and they're international, and they were started in Australia, but it's different. There are different clubs that start their clubs in certain areas, and they kind of build on promoting local surfing and the kids and the families that are more involved with it. And so we've got the Space Coast board riders here, and we partnered with them to help promote surfing and kind of allow the younger kids to get exposed to surfing history at the same time with the events that we work with them together on.
Nice. That's very cool. I've seen some of those different chapters of that. I think there's some in South Florida too that maybe I've seen or connected with a couple of those guys. But that's what's also really cool about surfing, just from a community standpoint. Just the amount of people that, even if they never surfed before, the interest to it or getting their kids involved in it. Because I do think there is something with children maybe these days that spend a little bit too much time indoors, or in technology in general, which I've been very fortunate that my kids have been enjoying the time outside and time surfing too. So very cool. Go ahead.
And there's other organizations as well. There's the Eastern Surfing Association, which has been around since 1968. And, you've got the Eco Pro up in Jacksonville and other surf series like that. So this whole area has always been hyper competitive. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why surfers from this area excel, because of these competitive organizations that exist that help promote competitive surfing with all the kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you do any other sports growing up?
I've been involved in martial arts as well.
Yeah. What kind?
I do Aikido. I taught Aikido for a number of years. I just got out of it a few years ago, although I just got back into it just kind of at my own speed, just to get a hand in. But cool. Other than that, I was never involved with sports, but I was always outdoors. We were involved with Boy Scouts when I was young. My dad was a real organizer for that, so we did a lot of camping, a lot of fishing, and outdoor activities. But as far as any sport is concerned, it was surfing.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like the. I played a few, organized sports. I did soccer. Football wasn't big enough at my school, so we didn't have that team. But, I like the team sports are nice, but I always sort of gravitated towards the individual ones. Track and field, swimming was always good. I think I like the team aspect, but my son is huge into football, and I tried to talk him out of it when he was 8. But it's hard to explain concussions and CTE to an 8-year-old. And then I'll be damned, he gets into it and starts excelling. Wins a state championship. They get national runner-up, and then by 10, he's got high schools looking at him. So it's like, I didn't realize how competitive that space was. Or how early they start thinking about trying to recruit to local schools, and even some of the private schools too. They're like, hey, if he wants to come here and play, my daughter can go there and stuff too. But I think there is something to them trying all things, trying all things. Yeah. Well, John, this was fun, man. I've been wanting to get you in here, wanted to talk a little bit of history with you, wanted to talk about, what you mentioned something too that I wanted to bring back to Ron Jons, right? Something about when I was a kid, it always had this like a kook feel to it. Have you ever heard this before, or was this just in my circle? And I have you ever heard this before?
No, it's not your imagination.
Okay.
It's Ron Jons has gotten kind of a bum rap. Ron Domena opened up the first surf shop in Florida, or in Brevard County in 1962. So he's was one of the earliest pioneers, and he built up his business and made a very successful shop. And then that was during the 60s, and then when the 70s came around, the shortboard revolution happened, and everybody's all cosmic and too cool for school, and all of a sudden, if you're over 30, you weren't cool, and that was kind of where he fit in. And so all of a sudden, it wasn't cool to go to Ron Jons anymore, and you had other shops, the little smaller shops like Natural Art and Savick Brothers and all these other ones opening up when the shortboard revolution came about. So, Ron Jons could have faded out like 90% of the other surf shops did. But he's a very smart businessman, and he realized that, if people are too cool to come here to buy surfboards, I'll sell other things. And he started getting into clothing lines and other all kinds of products. He at one time had the largest selection of Levi's on the East Coast.
Oh, really?
And so he, so they moved into a niche where they could stay in business. And at the time, everybody thought that was uncool. But you look at surf shops nowadays, and they're all selling clothing and tennis shoes and
sunglasses
all the other stuff.
Else.
Because they realize that, if you want to survive, you're gonna have a tough time just selling surfboards. You need to widen your market.
Interesting, because I always heard it, and then you always never wanted to, rock the Ron Jons logo or anything like that. But it seems like I don't know, that was probably misplaced. Again, back to caring what people think about you. But that makes sense, because I'm sure the margins in surfboard are probably not as good as clothing or some of the other things that they're making serious money on.
Yeah, clothing is like 50-50.
Right.
Surfboards are like 10 to 20%.
Oh, geez, yeah. So you got to move a lot of surfboards versus, obviously not near as much clothing. I'm sure sunglasses.
But Ron Jons is, they've always supported surfing. They sponsored C.J. Hobgood. They're supporting Caroline Marks and, so many other surfers. So they've always, been there.
Yeah. I got to get that mindset out of my mind, on that one, because, and my daughter loves it there. She loves walking through the boardroom, obviously shopping in the clothes and stuff too. But I wanted to ask you about that one, because it's one that I felt like I always had this idea, but I never knew where it came from. But a misplaced idea if I sit down and think about it.
Well, they've given us our space for free for over 20 years, so that says a lot.
Wow, that does say a lot. Like you said, what they've done not only for surfing and as an industry, but just the community in general. Again, the amount of people they employ there. It's a huge destination. Me and Keith were talking about that too, just from an employer and a tax revenue standpoint. I mean, it's a big deal over there for Cocoa Beach and for Brevard County in general. So, interesting. Yeah, I've always been went to a lot of the Quiet Flights growing up, and then Catalyst. Now that's my main shop, really, where I get all my boards from. I switched over to like that Firewire brand probably 7 or 8 years ago now. They seem to last a lot longer. I felt like I was going through boards quite regularly, and some of the Quiet Flights too. I loved them, but I don't know, they just didn't feel like they held up as long as some of the newer tech as it's been coming out. But like anything, stuff always changes on the tech side of things. But you ever been on any of those Firewire surfboards? Or
I haven't ridden Firewires, but I'm all in on epoxy.
Yeah.
There's so many good shapers in the area. You can't really you don't have enough time in your life to buy good boards from every one of them.
Yeah.
But the boards I've ridden over the last few years have been by Stu Sharp, who understands epoxy really well, and
nice.
They've ridden insanely well. They've been very durable.
Nice.
My stand up that I have now from him, I've had since 2016. So
that's pretty good lifespan. Yeah. It's kind of a sickness, though, I find myself, where I feel like I need a new board or I need to try something new. It's kind of like capitalism gets a hold of you, where you think you want to try the latest and greatest things. But I've tried to cut that quiver down as I go, down to these 3 boards, which kind of cover all my avenues.
Well, that's the other thing. As you get older, you realize you don't really need that many boards.
Yeah, okay.
You can do pretty well on 2 boards or 3 boards.
Yeah, I lugged 3 out there to California, and that was a mistake. Just from I hate airports. I spent too much time in them. But carrying 3 boards around in the airport got old real quick. But I did ride. No, I only rode 2 of them out there. I didn't ride the 7.0 while I was out there. The waves got progressively bigger as I was there, which was fun. I was out there for work, and I went out 3 days early and surfed like twice a day before all my meetings and stuff. So I was wore out. But it got bigger and bigger, and then by that last day, I'm surfing once in the morning. But you mentioned something about Florida that I love. It's just you don't really ever have to wear wetsuits. Something about out there. It's not so bad if it's a dry wetsuit, but putting it on the next morning before the sun comes up and it didn't dry all the way before, I got over that real quick.
Yeah, wetsuits really suck.
Yeah, it changes it.
If you got to wear one, you got to wear one, but I'd rather not.
Yeah, same. Sometimes, certain times of the year over here, it makes sense to have them, or early morning stuff before the sun comes up and heats up everything. But yeah, if you had the choice, just go with baggies all day. Yeah, nice. Anything else to cover that we didn't talk about, or I think we hit a lot of the history? Oh, your magazine collection. I did want to get in on that. Yeah. How long have you? What is your oldest magazine that you have in there, you think?
We have the surfing publications, and the more well-known ones back to about 1962.
Wow.
Probably the oldest one we have in the museum is the called Hawaiian Surfing. It's written by Tom Blake, who I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Was a pioneer, and it was a copy that was given to Murph the Surf by Tom Blake.
What a name, Murph the Surf.
Yeah, he was the original Murph the Surf. So.
But where do you acquire all them from? Because you have quite the collection there.
People donate them to us.
Oh, okay.
We've had just heaps and heaps of magazines donated to us, and you got to kind of cull through them because a lot of them are you have multiple copies of. But when we just got a collection last year from a guy, Bill Longnecker, up in Jacksonville Beach, in which he had a huge collection, like 10 Rubbermaid containers full of magazines.
Oh man!
But because what he had was just really amazing, because we were able to get a bunch of magazines that we didn't have before that were really early magazines, and so it kind of added to it the collection that we already had.
Nice.
And a lot of those are actually, we have on our website. You can go online and look at these old magazines.
Yeah, I flipped through the archives on there a few times. That's pretty cool. Do you scan those all in, or how do they get into there?
Yeah, I do.
You do that? You scan them all in there?
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a long-term project.
Tedious process. Yeah. Jeez. Well, I think it's real cool what you're doing. And, when I first started coming over here and trying to reach out to people to connect with on the surfing scene, I thought it was pretty sweet that there's a place there that's preserving some of this for forever, for as long as it's obviously going to be kept. So I'm glad we could get together and chat about it a little bit. And for me, I've been using this as a way to, again, meet people, explore my interests, but also lock in things in time. That's kind of what's nice about the digital age that we've been in for forever now, is if I ever get to that point, my grandfather, who had the Spanish house, he unfortunately, suffered Alzheimer's by the time he got to like 70. But then he lived 24 years where he didn't know who his kids were. It was sad to see. So if that ever happens, genetically, I have a couple things to look back on and hopefully remember the stuff I used to think about, because I've been doing this 4 years now. So it's kind of an interesting way to lock moments in time in.
Yeah, I've got everything on my hard drive if I can't remember anything.
Nice, Ed, nice. Yeah, because this hard drive, it has a shelf life, I suppose, up there. Yeah. What do you think of that Voodoo Ranger? The beer.
Oh, the beer?
Yeah.
Good.
Not bad, for an IPA. It's a juice for, shout out Voodoo Ranger. This has been one of my dad's and my go-to if we're, hanging out or just, hanging in the woods or whatever. Have a couple of these. But,
Makes the podcast go.
That's easier. That's it. Yes. Well, John, I appreciate it. And then Surfing Santa, I got to get on that. I want to come back by. I want to bring my kids to the museum, too. They've been wanting to come by there. My wife will probably come as well. But my kids and I have been talking about swinging through there, and we'll have to connect with you. And
give me a call when you come, and I'll meet you there.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And if you ever want to come back by and chat about anything else, you know where I'm at now.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Sweet, me too.